Yo, what's up, everyone, and welcome back to the Locked On 49ers Squad Show. I'm your host, Eric Triple E. Engel. You may know me as the former producer for the Murph and Mac Morning Show on KMBR, or maybe from some of these other Locked On shows that we do. And today, we got a lot of rumors kicked around in this last week about big Dexter Lawrence from the New York Giants. Would he be a potential fit here in San Francisco?
Hey, everyone, I'm Dwayne Boyd, and the 49ers had the local pro day just yesterday. I remember back in my first time coaching, and they had the first pro day. We had guys coming from everywhere. We had guys coming from bartenders, bouncers, and hopefully it's gotten a little bit more classier today than it was back in the old days.
And I'm Eric Nosley, NFL trending reporter with USA Today. And I'll be talking about we're coming up on the draft, looking at some latest mocks, potential targets as we're gearing up. We're almost there.
1 week away before we get some real news to bring you guys here on the Locked On 49ers Squad Show. But until then, got a lot of conjecture for you on today's show, which starts right now.
To all the faithful, it's the 49ers Squad. Everything San Francisco 49ers every week. Covering all the big hits and game-changing plays from Levi's Stadium. The way only the Locked On Podcast Network can. For those faithful to the Bay, the 49ers Squad Show starts now.
Hey, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us on another edition of the Locked On 49ers show. However you're tuning in, whether it's on the Locked On 49ers YouTube channel or on the Locked On 49ers podcast feed, we appreciate it. Please, please, please make sure you are subscribed if you aren't already. And guys, let's just dive right into this Dexter Lawrence stuff. Because, I mean, anytime that a premier defensive player like this becomes available, everybody, all teams in the NFL, unless you are in the middle of like a dramatic rebuild, you're probably going to be interested in this guy. So the 49ers, obviously in a win now mode, this guy could be a huge, huge, huge addition to any D-line, but especially with the versatility that he brings, the ability to push the pocket from the middle of the defensive line and generate quarterback pressures from the defensive tackle position at a ridiculous rate, especially when you look at the rest of the NFL. This guy is a little bit of a unicorn at the position. He's aging. He's definitely at the back end of his prime, of his athletic prime, and I think he wants to go somewhere where he can win now. So, Dwayne, even though the 49ers are kind of full at the defensive tackle position, you got all the three young guys from last year coming back who all look to play big roles in this year's front seven on the defense. Do you think that there's still a spot for Dexter Lawrence if the 49ers wanted to go out and grab him?
Well, I think there's a spot for him because we've been talking about they got those young guys inside. Okay, so bringing him in brings a lot of experience inside, and with young guys, an older player like that can help bring along them a lot faster than, say, coaching. Because they're going to look up to, well, this is Dexter Lawrence. He knows what he's talking about. And it's the little tips that he can give those young guys that'll help them a lot. So I think it would be a good deal if they could swing it, but I don't think he's leaving New York.
Interesting. So even though he's kind of planted the flag and said, I don't want to be here, you think he still goes back to the Giants for the 2026 season?
I think so. I don't see how Harbaugh is going to let him leave because he's like he's a heart and soul of that defense, the defensive line, and it's a young defensive line at that in New York. You know, they got a bunch of young guys that they need to help bring along too, and maybe it's a thing that he's trying to see if there's a market for him out there. I think that might be one of those things he's throwing out there with, I want out. So.
Yeah, and I mean, the Giants D-line does have some pieces. Don't forget they got Brian Burns over there too. I mean, that D-line, if you're looking for one of the things the Giants actually did well, like that defensive, that front four that they have is a pretty solid unit. And so if they lost this guy, Dexter Lawrence, I think that would be a big loss for the New York Giants. But again, they're in the middle of a rebuild, and I think that he wants to go to a more win-now situation. And Ayrton, what would you think a package for Dexter Lawrence would look like if the 49ers were to trade for him? One thing, I was bringing up the quarterback pressures earlier. One thing of note, he's had 108 quarterback pressures since 2022, which is more than 70% pressures more than the next closest defensive tackle, which is Vita Vea, who had like 30 something. I mean, like, he is, to say that this guy is the best pass rusher at the position is a massive understatement. I mean, this guy is a game changer at the defensive tackle position. So what do you think a package would look like?
It's tough because it's still interior defensive lineman. It's not quite it's not quite an edge rusher. So you're not going to see like a Max Crosby type deal where it's multiple firsts. I could see one first and then either like a late day 2 pick, either, a round 3 or round 2 pick as well. It's going to take at least a first. I don't think it'll take multiple firsts, especially considering his age. He will be entering, I believe, his age 29. Yeah, age 29 season this year. So if this was Dexter Lawrence 3 years ago, okay, maybe we could start talking about that. But he's one of those guys where as soon as Aaron Donald retired, he pretty much was one of the contenders for best interior defensive lineman in the league. With Donald, no longer in the business, it's pretty much between him, in my opinion, him and Jeffrey Simmons are up there from Tennessee. So those are two of those guys that are like, hey, they're kind of the standard bearers for the position, even though they're not necessarily on competitive teams. They're two of the best in the business. So when you're the best in business and teams are starting to value, I feel like NFL defenses are valuing getting pressure regardless of where it's from. You'd get a decent haul for him.
And do you think that if the 49ers were to package maybe some of these younger defensive tackles that they found, I mean, if you're, playing the scenario out, you probably wouldn't want to keep 3 to 4 starting level defensive tackles on this roster. So if the 49ers were to package some picks with some of these younger guys, do you think that they could get Dexter Lawrence for potentially less than a first round pick, like maybe a second and like a CJ West and like a fifth or something like that? Do you think that would be a possibility?
I'd probably say Alfred Collins, a second and a third would probably be okay. Now we're starting to see that, or a second and 2/3, 2 seconds and a third plus Collins, just to be like, okay, I think this feels more like it, just because he's young, but he has that pedigree. So the Giants are going to want to be like, hey, we got him for a guy who's taken in the second round, top 50. So at least we got, some top talent there. But yeah, packaging one of those younger guys could be a good way to offset that. Because as you both mentioned, like the stable of pass rushers the Giants have is probably the biggest strength of their team. Just with Burns, as you said, you've got Lawrence, but you also got Abdul Carter, who flashed really well as a rookie. So yeah, it could be a thing where it's like, okay, we can lean on some of those guys a little bit more with this younger guy, plus the picks we could get back.
And Dwayne, what would a defensive line look like with Dexter Lawrence and Bosa and all these other guys that the Niners have? I mean, how would that work together? Like, how do you think these guys would mesh? Do you think that Lawrence's skill set would bolster what the rest of the 49ers defensive front is trying to do?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, but you look at it right now, man, the 49ers have a lot of interior linemen if they brought Dexter Lawrence along. So they would have to get rid of somebody. But I think with the way he pressures up the middle, they could use more pressure up the middle. That would help Bosa's game, and that would help Malik's game too, because last year we sat here and watched games and there was no pressure up the middle at all. It was like quarterbacks could go back there and pat the ball and till the letters came off the ball. They was back there for so long. And I think they need help with interior linemen with getting pressure on the quarterback. And going back again, I think he would help the younger guys, just help them along the way of telling them what to do, what to work on, how different offensive linemen sit, what's the best way to beat them, just teaching them the little things, just don't go up there and run down the middle of them. I have a hard time with that. I hate when players rush down the middle of an offensive tackle. It's just like throwing spitballs against the refrigerator. It's just going to stick and go nowhere. And that's the way their inside pass rush was last year for the 49ers. It was a bunch of spitballs. The pass rush was going nowhere.
Yeah, a bunch of magnets, as you've called them in the past. And don't forget, they got Osa Odigizua in the mix as well at the defensive tackle position. So when you're thinking about all of the options that the 49ers have. I mean, you saw Mikael Williams jump inside and play a little bit of inside interior D-line last year. And so you're looking at what you got, and it's CJ West, Alfred Collins, Mikael Williams, and Osa Odighizuwa right now. It's already more guys than you can fit on the field at one time at that position. If you throw in another, it wouldn't be a bad idea for them to add some depth pieces at the position. But if you're throwing in another, top tier, all pro level player at the position, you kind of get a logjam there. So Dwayne, if you were to have to, if you were going to bring Dexter Lawrence in and you were going to have to get rid of someone who's already there, and it's probably not going to be Osa Odighizuwa, considering the team just traded for him. So if you're looking at those three interior defensive linemen that the 49ers got from last year's draft, which one would you be most okay with the 49ers moving on from? And who would you want to make sure that the 49ers just don't let go of this guy, hang on to this guy no matter what? Or is there even a guy, would any of these three be off the table for you in a potential trade?
Well, I think the guy that I would move on from is Collins, okay? But he would be the most likely. And the other guy, well, he's the number one pick. You can't move Williams. You can't move away from him because he flashed signs of being someone who's going down the road is going to be a decent player. So that would be the one guy that I would pick.
Yeah, I would agree. I think he gives you the most versatility as well. I mean, he can play inside, he can play outside, he can do a lot of different things. He's able to generate some pressure. He also plays the run very well. I think he's the most versatile of those three for sure. And when you're looking at the Raheem Morris front, the penny front that he likes to use with those five, that 5-man look, you want guys that can play in multiple spots, guys that can rotate around. And if you have an Osa Odighizuwa, Dexter Lawrence, and Mikael Williams and Nick Bosa, you can kind of get really creative with that. I think you could pretty much move any of those guys anywhere. I might hesitate on moving Nick Bosa onto the inside of that formation, but Dwayne, when you think of the possibilities of all the different multitudes that the 49ers could use if they do go and get Dexter Lawrence, where's your brain go with that? Put on the coaching cap and what's that combination of players say to you?
That combination of players say to me that I would have guys all over the place. I would create some problems because it is one thing that our offensive coaches don't like is when you're moving guys around, okay? Because it creates a problem for that coaching because each guy that you're moving in a different spot to get a matchup, they don't like that. And that's one thing that defensive coaches try to get the best out of their players is putting them in a spot where they can be successful. So how you do that? You do that with matchup, watching film and see who struggles with different guys. And that's the only way to go. And that's what you're going to see with the 49ers. They're going to create a lot of matchups that's going to create problems for teams that they're going to be facing this year and down the road, I think.
Yeah, and if you were able to add Dexter Lawrence to this mix, obviously you can do a whole hell of a lot more with those mix and match and the various looks that you could give opponents up front. I think the 49ers can still do that even without going and getting a guy like Dexter Lawrence. You still have a lot of versatility already on this defensive line, on this defensive front. So I think you don't need a guy like Dexter Lawrence, but if you did go out and get another dominant piece to add to this defensive line, I'm not going to say he's going to have the same level of an impact that a Myles Garrett would, going back to a conversation that we had a couple weeks ago. But I think that if you add Dexter Lawrence to this defensive front, this defense, it's going to be one of the best in the NFL if you were able to add a guy like that into the mix. And it gives you a way to compete with the Rams and the Seahawks without having to try to just, build up the secondary to stop their super top tier wide receivers. It gives you a different way to attack them rather than just going strength on strength. It allows you to kind of go after some of the weaker parts of those teams and really maybe try to get after these quarterbacks that they have that aren't the most mobile. They don't have the most solid offensive lines that we've seen in the NFL. Seattle's pretty solid, but the Rams losing some guys this offseason up front. So it would be a really creative way, I think, for the 49ers to kind of close the gap between them and the top teams in their in the NFC West alongside them. So I really think that it would be a great move for the 49ers, but my confidence level on them making this type of a move is pretty low. So Ayrton, on the scale of 1 to 10, 10 being this is happening tomorrow, this is a lock, and a 1 being like this is never going to happen in a million years. Where are you kind of ranking this on that sliding scale of probability?
I'd say probably a 2, just because I don't think it wouldn't happen in a million years. I just think it would take a lot of maneuvering, and I feel like between the draft capital shipped off for Trey Lance and then also for Christian McCaffrey, it's like obviously those two trades turned out very differently for the success of the 49ers, but just kind of being like, okay, we've made big investments before, like let's be a little bit more measured and seeing the results of that. So I feel like they're going to kick the tires on it because every smart team should. The only thing is I'm not sure the 49ers could offer the best package for Dexter Lawrence that the Giants would want to, even if they did even decide to move on from him, would be the one that the Giants want to take.
Yeah, the one thing that I really hope does not happen is that the Rams or the Seahawks end up landing this guy, because that would just be the worst case scenario for the 49ers. Dwayne, do you think it would be smart for a team, like if you're the 49ers and you know that the Rams/Seahawks are in on this guy, like you got the New York Giants GM on the phone and he's telling you, Seattle's going to give us a first and a player, I need you to top this or we're going to send him to Seattle. Does that change the calculus if you're San Francisco? Like, you maybe stretch a little to make this trade just to block a team like the Rams or the Seahawks getting a guy like Dexter Lawrence, or do you just stay in your lane, do what you need to do, and just focus on who you got in the building already and developing those guys?
Well, if the Seahawks was getting him and they already got Williams inside, you putting those two guys back together again, man. I would call up another team in the AFC and say, look, I'll trade you whoever you want if you'll trade him and get him out of our conference. I wouldn't put him back in the NFC West. I would do something to stop it because the Rams, man, that defense is good. You add him in there, it's better. It's like night and day from where it was last year, and they was good last year. So you would hope that it's just a smokescreen that the Giants are throwing out there right now to see what they can get. Just feeling what's going to happen on draft day if they got any takers yet. So I would say, man, no way I would want those guys in the conference. Yeah, well, back in the old days, it used to be, ship them off to Buffalo. You can't even ship them there no more. And so it is one of the things, ship them off somewhere that, maybe Miami, okay? Or send him down there. Don't send him to the West Coast. So get rid of that idea.
Yeah, if he's not landing on the 49ers, I do not want to see this guy on an NFC team. I would really, really, really appreciate it if he, like you said, landed with a Miami Dolphins or like a New York Jets. I don't think he's going to want to be going to one of those teams, considering that I think the reason he's wanting to depart the Giants is because of the rebuild process, and I think he wants to play for a winner. But hey, when you're in this position and you're demanding a trade and you don't really have a whole lot of say as to what's going to happen, you got to kind of account for that, right? Like, if you're just like Brandon Ayuk, if you're Brandon Ayuk sitting saying that you don't want to be in San Francisco, well, buddy, you might end up a Jet. You might end up going to the Steelers where things aren't super great. You might end up going to the Commanders where they've been on a little bit of an upswing the last few years with Jaden Daniels at quarterback. But hey, we've seen that thing deteriorate in that same place with a upstart young quarterback not too long ago in the past. Of course, we're talking about the RG3 era that crumbled just as quickly as it exploded onto the scene in Washington. And so there's no real sure thing. Like, you can maybe think the grass is greener on the other side type situation, but you never really know what that's going to be like in the NFL until you finally figure out where you're going to be going as a player who's demanding a trade. So lots of possibilities as to where Dexter Lawrence could end up. It would be great if it's the Niners, but ultimately I think we're all in agreement that as long as it's not the Rams or the Seahawks, I think it's going to be okay. So hopefully he doesn't end up in one of those two places. But there's a lot of other guys out there, obviously, with the draft a week away. We got to get you guys up to speed on Ayrton Ostley's latest mock draft from USA Today. We've got to get into that next. And also, don't forget, later on, the 49ers local pro day, maybe some diamonds in the rough that the 49ers worked out yesterday down at the SAP Performance Facility next to Levi Stadium. So we'll get into both of those things next here on the Locked On 49ers Squad Show. The NBA playoffs are here, where every possession matters, every matchup is magnified, and every game can swing a series. And right now, FanDuel is giving new customers a great way to get in on the action. I really think that if you are looking for an NBA winner, I know this is chalk, but if you're looking for an NBA Finals champion to put some money on ahead of the tournament officially starting, it's the Oklahoma City Thunder. And I know that's a chalk pick. I gave you guys another chalk pick in Michigan to win the NCAA championship, and you saw what happened there. So ride with the winners, man. Oklahoma City Thunder. Sports betting's about making money, not losing money. And while the return might not be the best, that is where you're going to make some money in this NBA playoffs. And FanDuel, it just makes the entire playoff experience more engaging from start to finish. You can use the website at any time to look up current lines and odds and get right in on the action. So head to FanDuel.com to get started. FanDuel, play your game. Welcome back to the Locked On 49ers Squad Show. I'm your host, Eric Triple E. Engel, joined by Dwayne Board, four-time Super Bowl champion, and Ayrton Ostley of USA Today. And Ayrton, you got a few mock drafts that you've done recently, but you know it's like your bread and butter with USA Today. I know how much you love this time of year, and so let's do a deep dive into your latest mock draft. Are there any big surprises that you got in there that you want the people to pay attention to? I know that number one, you got the number one pick is virtually everybody else and every other mock draft in the entire country. Obviously, everyone's suspecting that Fernando Mendoza of Indiana is going to land with the Las Vegas Raiders. But after that, even at the number 2 pick and number 3 picks, you kind of have a different philosophy or a different idea of how this might play out than some of the other mock drafts I've seen.
Yeah, so this one overall is just such an intriguing class. Like I'm not entirely there's not a lot of sure things that we feel pretty confident in. Like last year we knew the top 3 was probably going to be Cam Ward, Travis Hunter, and Abdul Carter. We pretty much were like, yeah, that's going to be the top 3 in some order because those are the 2 best players plus the best quarterback. So it's like, okay, cool. We got that out of the way. With this, we have the best quarterback who is going number 1. I can't imagine a situation in which he didn't go number 1 or the Raiders took somebody else or traded out of that. That's just not happening. So he's going to go number 1. The question is then what happens? So I kind of went with the Jets having raised the floor of their defense so much in free agency, going with best prospect overall in Arvell Reese. That's kind of where the sticking point begins because you could really find the Jets could go in a lot of different directions with that. Probably going to go defense just because of the strength of that side of the ball at the top in this class. The question is just, is it an edge rusher, a linebacker, or Reese, who's just kind of the best player available? He's my best player in the class. So that's where it gets to be a sticking point because the Jets brought in a lot of good run defenders for that edge position, a lot of edge setters against the run, not a ton of pass rush production in their moves. So getting somebody like Bailey, who's proven, is going to be interesting. I could say overall, I'm guessing from one of my surest things is I'm very, very certain Jeremiah Love's going to go in the top 5, the running back from Notre Dame, because of what tells me that is what the Saints and the Chiefs did in free agency by bringing in Kenneth Walker and Travis Etienne. By doing that, that tells me they don't expect Love to be there by the time they're on the clock. So he's going to go early. That'd be probably the biggest takeaways is obviously Mendoza number 1, Love top 5. And then I would say be really curious about the Cardinals at 3. In this mock, I did not have them moving. I had them sticking and taking the best offensive lineman available because it's a new regime. A lot of times new regimes come in, they just want to get the best trench player they can, specifically, more preferably on offense. So I went with Spencer Fano there. but I know it's very popular at that spot for mocks to include the Cowboys trading up to get a linebacker because they have a huge need, and the Cardinals have enough needs they're happy to move back. So I'd say watch out for the Cowboys to move up. Once you get past the top 10, I did not include trades in this mock. I have a full 7-round mock coming later that will include trades. And I think this first round is going to be a lot of movement, especially when you get outside the top 9 or 10 picks. I could see a lot of teams basically being like, hey, these are our guys. Let's go up and get them and making some serious moves.
How many trades do you think we're going to see in this first round? I mean, are we thinking more than like 2 or 3? Are we thinking like a potential just chaos mode?
I think you'll probably see 2 or 3 in the top 20. And then when you get to the back end of that first round, that's when I think all heck's it's going to be the wild, wild west out there. It's going to be crazy. So I think just especially with some of these guys, the question is going to be, for me, quarterback. Does somebody move up for a Ty Simpson to secure that 5th-year option? I'll give a little bit of a spoiler. I had the Jets doing that in my 7-round mock that's coming, because just to give Aaron Glenn and that regime a couple ways out in case things don't go well in 2026. They can kind of pin their hat on, well, hey, we got a young quarterback. He could be good in case Geno doesn't work out. So who moves up for Ty Simpson if they do? Also, there's just a bunch of there's so many things that could happen at that back end. There's a log jam of offensive linemen that we've talked about, Caleb Lomu, a lot. There's a bunch of other ones, a bunch of risers that someone could move up and say, hey, you know what? Let's move up 10 spots, drop back into the end of the first round, make sure we get our guy just so we're set in the trenches on offense. So I think you could see, I would say, estimating right now, I'd say probably 5 trades in the first round.
Wow.
Would be probably makes the most sense to me.
That just sounds like so much chaos to me, and I love that. I think if you're a fan of the NFL draft and just the NFL in general, all these trades sound fun, man. Like it's chaotic and it's entertaining for sure. The one thing I can't let this go without mentioning it. Did you say if Geno Smith doesn't work out for the New York Jets? Because I'm pretty sure we've already seen this at least once before, where Geno Smith has not worked out. In his most recent stop with the Raiders, he looked horrible. Like, I don't even understand how this guy has a starting job in the NFL at this point. So just curious, you did say if Geno Smith fails, not when, correct?
Correct. I put a lot of what happened in Las Vegas on Chip Kelly. Watching some of the rules for his offensive line made no sense to me. Some of that stuff just did not set up the offense for success. So I think it's somewhere, but I think Geno is somewhere between what we saw last year and what we saw 2 years ago, which is, he could be okay, but I don't think he's that bad. But we'll see. I'm happy to be wrong.
Well, when I'm sitting here looking through this, it just seems like a very, very heavy defensive draft in general. Like the top end of this draft, the strength is defense. And so, Dwayne, what do you make of that? Like, is this a draft where the 49ers should be trying to trade up into the first round and maybe acquire more top end talent? Or is this a draft where you would be comfortable with them trading back?
I would be comfortable with them trading back. And going over the Jet thing, if you look at them taking Geno, okay, so that's telling me that they're going to take Ty Simpson, okay, because Geno's going to be a backup eventually, because Geno, New York didn't set too well with Geno his first time around, and I'm pretty sure that it's not going to do very good his second time around. So I can see them taking Ty Simpson. And as for the 49ers, the best thing sitting at 27th, if they don't have that offensive lineman sitting there, or will they take the best available player? The guy that's, I think, is the safety from Toledo. Where will he go? Will he go 27th, or do you move back and hopefully somebody overlooks him and you can get him in the early second round? Yeah, that would be a great bargain for them. And we talked about they need help at safety, and to me, that guy can play football.
Yeah, and Ayrton, in your latest mock draft, you got him going. You got Emmanuel McNeil Warren going to the Chicago Bears. 2 picks before the 49ers select at 27. it's going to be, I think, a toss-up whether or not this guy is available. And I do think that I think most people have a second round grade on him, or at least a very high second round grade, some in the back end of the first. But this is a guy who has slowly and steadily kind of climbed up the prospect rankings ladder over the last month or so. Ayrton, why has McNeil Warren been such a riser in this draft? Is it just because the safety position is kind of thin at the top, or has this guy been doing things that actually impress and make NFL teams want to maybe take a little bit of a gamble and take a safety in that first round?
Oh yeah, I think it has a couple of factors. First thing I'd say is he's one of the biggest safeties in this class. He's 6'3", 201 at the combine. So he's a bigger body with a very, very, very athletic skill set. So he has the versatility where he has that length and that athleticism to handle man coverage assignments. And he's also not at all shy about hitting people in the run game. So that combination where it's like, okay, he's long enough, fast enough to handle coverage. He hits hard in the run game. That makes like, okay, we can move this guy around. He's a versatile piece in this class. And I think this is a pretty solid safety class overall, because you got Caleb Downs out of Ohio State, who's my second best player in this class. You got Dylan Thieneman out of Oregon, who probably is a top 20 guy, just because once you get past the first 8 in this class, first 8 or 9 players, it starts to be like, okay, kind of flattens out from there. So yeah, I could see McNeil Warren, just because of that versatility. That's why I had him going to the Bears after they lost both their starting safeties from last year in free agency. So I think the Bears have a huge need at safety there, but it could also be something where they circle back to that, because that defense needs a whole lot of talent at a whole lot of spots. So they could prioritize something, and McNeil Warren could fall right into the 49ers lap. There's also a situation I could see playing out where, hey, that doesn't work out. Loop back around later on with all those 4th round picks. There's going to be some good guys there available too. So I would say if McNeil Warren is off the board at 25, like I predicted, this guy is not falling. We got great options for the 49ers going later.
Yeah, and maybe we can talk about some of those guys. We also had the 49ers just yesterday, hosting their local pro day, which usually doesn't draw a whole lot of big name guys. It's more diamonds in the rough, guys who graduated from local colleges or high schools. And as Dwayne mentioned at the top of the show, some veterans who are trying to maybe work their way back into the league, or guys that graduated a couple years ago and are trying to maybe find a spot on an NFL roster. So let's get into that next. The 49ers local pro day, some diamonds in the rough to keep an eye on. That's what's coming up next here on the Locked On 49ers Squad Show. Today's show is brought to you by TurboTax. It's tax time, but for a lot of us, the old way of doing taxes is a lot. Trying to book an appointment that's not the most convenient, or sitting in a waiting room with a stack of papers and emailing back and forth and wondering if they really get your situation. But this year, you're getting a major upgrade. Intuit TurboTax now has in-person locations nationwide. You can meet face-to-face with a real tax expert, and your documents get uploaded straight to your TurboTax app on the spot. And just like that, you're done. Your TurboTax expert works to get you every dollar you deserve, while you get real-time notifications as you go about your day. It's the relief of walking in and meeting a real person, and walking out knowing your taxes are being handled right. Head to turbotax.com/local to find a store near you and book your appointment today. Welcome back to the Locked On 49ers Squad Show. I'm your host, Eric Triple E Engel, joined by Dwayne Board, 4-time Super Bowl champion, and Ayrton Osley of USA Today. And yesterday, the 49ers hosted their annual local pro day, which, as I said before, it's an invite list of guys that, either played college ball in the Bay Area, or maybe graduated from a Bay Area high school, or maybe like in the case of Jack Endries, a guy who started their career at a Bay Area college, maybe went somewhere else and finished. And you got a handful of guys that have been out of football for maybe a year or two that are trying to work their way back in. And you just kind of have a mishmash of guys. The top ranked prospect at this event was Julian Neal. He's out of Arkansas, cornerback, and this kid graduated from Mission High in San Francisco prior to his college career. And he, from everything I've read, seems like Julian Neal was the most impressive guy at the local pro day. And he's ranked kind of like a fringe top 100 player. And I mean, he might sneak up on a few teams' draft boards into maybe that third round area. Maybe even, I think it would be crazy if this happened, but back end of the second round, that might be a bit of a reach for some teams. But this guy, he's been playing really well or performing really well in his offseason workouts. And he's a guy who's got some ball skills. He doesn't have super top end speed. He ran a 4.49, I believe. And so he's got the speed to keep up, but nothing that's going to blow you away. But Ayrton, when you're looking at a guy like Julian Neal out of Arkansas, do you think this is a guy who could help this 49ers secondary?
Absolutely, yeah. So he's a guy where, as you said, kind of lacks that elite speed, but he's got great size, 6'2", 203 pounds, a very, very physical guy in coverage. So that's the guy where he's going to go up and contend, or in for contested catches. He's going to make it tough on the receiver every single time. He's physical there. That translates to run defense as well. A solid tackler, a good presence there. So he basically, one of the things I was curious about him is he started out his college career at Fresno State, transfers to Arkansas. So that's a bump up in competition. And he seemed to handle it very well, especially in this era of NIL and players transferring conferences year to year. It's always important to see, okay, when they went up and, from Fresno State to the SEC with Arkansas, it's like, okay, how do they handle it? He was fine. And so he's a guy where if he's available in that, I have him at 125 on my big board. So that's right around, end of the third round, start of the fourth round. If he's around there in this cornerback class, I'd say, why not? He's a physical presence on the outside. Could definitely give the 49ers a bigger corner to go against some of these bigger receivers they'll see on a weekly basis in 2026.
And remember, the 49ers do not have that number 92 overall pick in the third round because they traded that away to the Cowboys for Osa Odigizua. Their next pick after round 2, so they pick it 27th overall in the first round, 58th overall in the second round, and then you wait for a while, 127 in round 4. So not that far off from where you just said that you had him ranked. You got him ranked at 125. They're picking at 127. Sounds like there's a possibility he could be around for the 49ers. And we know that this defense still needs to add a few pieces to that secondary. So maybe a guy to keep an eye on. And Dwayne is another guy that they invited that performed pretty well at the local pro day, and a guy who I actually have gotten a chance to see a lot over the last couple of years. I'm talking about Colin Wright of Stanford, where I watched him play out there at the farm where you won a Super Bowl in your career. And Colin Wright, man, he's not a small guy, but he also isn't huge. He's 6 feet tall, but he plays really physical. He plays bigger than he is. He's always stepping up and making plays in the run game. And he was by far Stanford's best guy in coverage last year. So do you think that a guy like Colin Wright, maybe a guy who he might not have faced the top end competition at the collegiate level, didn't really see him a whole lot in those big games? I mean, we saw him in the big game between Stanford and Cal, but that was the biggest game that he played in his career. And does that kind of concern you at all? Like when you get a guy coming out of a school that hasn't had a ton of success while that player was there in college, and the school that's been kind of facing maybe some lower level of competition. The ACC football isn't exactly, the SEC or the Big Ten. So do you have any reservations about a guy like Colin Wright, who comes from a school that's maybe not as prominent of a football powerhouse?
Well, it's one thing that I learned from Bill Walsh was he would always keep a local Stanford player and Cal player on the team, but he always got the ones that what you would look at, well, he has ability. He'll probably be a great special teams player, and of course they're smart. So you can get in a situation where you need someone that you can stick in the game and get you out, and that was his take on guys, to getting the local guys from Stanford and also from Cal. I think he's worth a shot because of. And the ACC, it's a little soft in football, okay, and not as soft as some other conferences, but it's pretty soft. But I would say I would take a chance on him because who knows, he could blossom as a great special teams player. I remember we was in Cleveland, we took a guy who was what was his name, Babin or something, went to Stanford. He turned out to be a decent football player. and a great special teams player for us in Cleveland.
Yeah,
Was it
and
Babin? I can't remember his name now, but no, this is back about 5 or 6 years ago. So, yeah.
Yeah, and Colin Wright was a guy who plays with a really high motor as well. I really liked watching this guy play while I was doing some work at Stanford with their radio team. And Colin Wright is, I think, he's a guy who, even when Stanford was out of a lot of these games, because Stanford got blown out a lot in his time there, he never stopped competing. He never just rolled over and said, this is a guy who has a standard, who plays with a level of intensity that doesn't waver based on the conditions of the game. He plays with it seems like he's got an expectation for himself, and he tries to live up to that every day on the field, which is something that I really liked about him. And obviously, like you said, any guy who's coming out of Stanford or Cal, you don't get pushed through courses there just to stay on the football team. Those aren't schools that are interested in keeping athletes on their sports teams that are, not good students. So almost every player on any sports team, men's or women's sports at Stanford or Cal, they're going to be sharp mentally, and they're going to be able to pick up more complicated schemes, which the 49ers definitely don't have a simple scheme on offense or defense. And so it would be, I think you need a guy with a little bit of that IQ to be able to come in and make a difference. But you did mention that, Bill Walsh liked to have some Cal guys on the roster too. And guess what? There's a bunch of Cal guys that got invited to the local pro day. The two that stood out the most to me, Zeke Masses at corner and Jacob DeJesus at wide receiver. And, DeJesus, it kind of intrigues me that his draft stock is so low, because this is a guy who, when I saw him last year against Stanford, and I'd watched some other Cal games last year as well, this guy was their ultimate gadget tool, a guy who they could move all around the field, motion pre-snap. Almost every single play pre-snap motion was Jacob DeJesus moving to a new side of the field, or lining up in the backfield at the running back position and then moving out wide. Utilized in a lot of ways that we saw Christian McCaffrey utilized for the 49ers last year, a guy who moves all over the field, used a little bit in the run game and in the pass game. Jacob DeJesus, not quite the same physical body type as a Christian McCaffrey. He's definitely not a running back, and not someone who could handle, I don't think, 400 to 500 touches in a season. I think he would literally shatter into a million pieces if you try that with Jacob DeJesus. But the point that I'm making here is this guy is quick. He's got good hands, and he's able to kind of do all those funky things that you used to see this 49ers offense do with Deebo Samuel. And they're not similar in the style of play after they have the ball in their hands. Very different. Jacob DeJesus wants to run away from you, make you miss. Deebo Samuel wants to punch you in the mouth and drive you into the ground. And so, Ayrton, when you think about a guy like Jacob DeJesus as maybe a potential fit into this 49ers offense, especially when you already got, your kind of the top end of that wide receiver room like fleshed out, do you think that this is a guy who could come in and maybe add a little bit of that dimension that we were hoping Sky Moore could add last year, and also maybe help out in the return game?
Yeah, I think it's definitely a situation where, I think, just to your point about him not getting a lot of play or a lot of interest in this, I think it's such a deep wide receiver class. We're seeing this year after year after year that there are so many draftable guys. And some of these smaller school guys, or as Dwayne's saying, an ACC guy, kind of slips through the cracks, because like ACC, we're not taking him super seriously in football. I don't blame you. So I could see that being a situation where he could be an undrafted free agent, absolutely come on over and taking a route like that. Maybe spend some time on the practice squad. I know that the 49ers took Junior Bergen in the 7th round last year to be kind of that return specialist guy. He dealt with some injuries, wasn't able to get on the field. Tale as old as time, I feel like, with the wide receiver room here. But you could definitely see DeJesus at least being an option for this team, because we talk so much. I feel like y'all probably talked during the season. We've been talking on these podcasts the past months or so, just the 49ers need to get faster on both sides of the ball. And this is a guy who, he may not be, a burner because of his slight frame. He may not be able to handle that if he can't separate immediately, but he's a guy who can at least offer some open field dynamic playmaking if possible. And if there's an offensive mind to get a guy open in that situation, I trust Kyle Shanahan more than most anybody in the NFL. So definitely would be worth a look.
Yeah, and I mean, when you're looking at the bottom end of this wide receiver room, the Jordan Watkinses of the world, I mean, I'm getting kind of tired of the 49ers getting these really small, undersized guys who are speedy and supposed to be really good slot receivers that we just never see on the field. Jacob Cowing, another guy who fits into that category. I mean, we've had so many, Trent Taylor, we've had so many of these kind of guys that Kyle Shanahan just, really hypes up. I mean, Dante Pettis. You hear Kyle Shanahan just really hyping up these wide receivers that just never pan out here in San Francisco. And in the case of Pettis, you wasted a pretty high draft pick on that guy. And he definitely did not pan out for you at all here in San Francisco. And one thing that I think is it's going to be low risk with Jacob DeJesus, right? This is a guy that if you're the 49ers and you're going to bring him in, it's going to be in an undrafted free agent situation. As I said before, the 49ers, they don't have a lot of draft picks in this year's draft, especially after trading that 3rd round pick. They only got 6 of them left. So in no pick after the 4th round, their last pick comes at 139 at the end of round 4. So you're not going to be spending a 6th round or a 7th round pick on some of these guys. So you really got to think about who's going to be there as an undrafted free agent. And this guy, I'm not entirely sure that he is going to be there. Ayrton, where do you think DeJesus ends up? Do you think that he is going to be available for the 49ers as an undrafted free agent, or do you think he gets scooped up probably in the 7th round?
I would be very surprised if he gets scooped up. This definitely feels like an undrafted free agent situation, but I also crazy stuff's happened. The Bears took a linebacker. I'm trying to remember which round it was last year. Oh my gosh, who was it? Yeah, Ruben Hippolyte II. They took a linebacker in the 4th round that I was like, who? So
Ian Peel skit name or something like Hingle McCringle. Yeah. I mean, I'm not familiar with this linebacker.
The thing is, he's 5'11", 236, and super fast. So it's like they just went, all right, he runs a low 4.40. Let's get him. So he's currently, I think, a linebacker like 6 on the depth chart. So not sure how much that's working out. But yeah, I'm open to being shocked, but I would be very, very surprised if he's taken during the draft. Just again, with the depth at this wide receiver class, as we're seeing year over year, you can get a lot of guys, especially ones that have a smaller frame, faster guys from more, power 4 conferences that are higher competition is a little bit better. So maybe look at like some of those LSU wide receivers, similar size to DeJesus, but you're like, oh, they're playing in the SEC, and they were able to produce. Teams may prioritize those guys later on and just kind of be like, okay, let's look at the pedigree, look at their production. So they may opt for that instead, leaving him to be a undrafted free agent for the Niners.
I just want to point out, didn't Cal beat both of the teams, or one of the teams in the national championship this year? Didn't they beat Miami earlier in this season? Because I'm pretty sure they did. And I'm just saying, Stanford beat Cal, which if you're going by like, transitive properties, that basically makes Stanford and ACC football, national championship level football. I don't know why we're destroying this conference right now. I mean, ACC football is basically the new conference of champions since the Pac-12 is a shell of itself. And I think the ACC should take that title. You know what I mean? Or we could just go back to having, the Pac-12 and college football the way it should be, instead of having, instead of having a team from Palo Alto, California, going and playing regular season weekday basketball games at Duke. Like, why is that happening? I will never understand that for the life of me. But that's a topic for a different show. I digress. But the last guy I wanted to get into before we move on, Jack Endries, the tight end from Texas, who started his career at Cal. And Dwayne, this guy's projected to be a 4th round pick, and he's shown some good hands, some good athleticism. He's a guy who I think could help you out a little bit as a blocker in the run game as well. And he could be a less expensive kind of George Kittle placeholder. I'm not going to say replacement, because I don't think that he would be replacing George Kittle in this offense in any way, but a nice little placeholder to package with Jake Tonjes to kind of hold together that tight end room before George Kittle comes back. So would you like to see the 49ers maybe take a chance on a Bay Area kid at the tight end position in the 4th round? Oh, Dwayne,
Anytime you get a local kid on your team, it's great for the area. So I think, getting him Jack would be a great deal for Kittle because I'm sure when Jack grew up, well, and he was watching George Kittle play and said, "Wow, man, I want to be like him." That's probably who he. Well, I wouldn't say that. Maybe he went for the guy in Kansas City. He wanted to be like him, but George Kittle, I would say, I would take him. It would be a great a great opportunity for him and also for the Bay Area because anytime you can get a local kid on your team, it says a lot.
Yeah, and he, kid grew up in Danville, Monte Vista High School. So I assume he was a George Kittle guy. He better have been a George Kittle guy growing up in Danville in the outer reaches of the Bay Area. He was also a first-team All Bay Area News Group in high school. He had 77 receptions for over 1,000 yards and 15 touchdowns in his final 2 seasons at Monte Vista High School. So this is a guy who's produced in college. He's produced at the high school level as well. He's a guy who, kind of like you were saying earlier, Ayrton, a guy who went from a conference which maybe doesn't have as much as high of a level of competition to going to Texas, which is it doesn't get higher level of competition than Texas college football in the SEC and everything. I mean, this guy has shown that he can play. So I don't think he would be a bad fit for the 49ers in that 4th round. They still need to figure out what they're going to do to kind of, calm the waters until George Kittle comes back at that tight end position. I do like that they're bringing back Jake Tonjes, but I think they need just a little, like one more body in there to kind of solidify that position group. So we'll see what happens in next week's NFL draft, but a lot of guys to keep tabs on. Julian Neal, Jack Endries, Jacob DeJesus, maybe Colin Wright at the back end of the draft. If Colin Wright and Jacob DeJesus both end up going undrafted, I don't know if Colin Wright is going to be an undrafted free agent. I'm not quite sure that guy's going to reach that point. I think someone's going to take a chance on him. I think he could go as high as the 5th or 6th round. This is a guy who I think is it's going to be a reach for the 49ers to be able to get him. They'd probably have to trade back in to get him, and I don't entirely see that happening. So we'll see what happens with all these local pro day diamonds in the rough. But we got to move on. We got a little bit more to get through in today's show, because just when you thought the Mac Jones trade rumors had been put to bed, well, we got some more rumors swirling about a potential trade. Who is this mystery team? We'll get into that next here on the Locked On 49ers Squad Show. Welcome back to the Locked On 49ers Squad Show. I'm your host, Eric Triple E Engel, joined by Dwayne Board, 4-time Super Bowl champion, and Ayrton Osley of USA Today. And guys, I know that it's like the last segment of this show. Seemingly every time we got to give you guys some updates on 3 things: the Trent Williams contract situation, which I'll be really quick this time. There's no news. Or the Brandon Ayuk situation, which I got another update on that for you guys very quick, just as quick as the Trent Williams update. Also, no news. Right. Mac Jones, the third piece of this as stale as pond water type news to discuss, but we got to talk about it because it's going to shape what the 49ers are able to do in the draft. Mac Jones trade rumors have kind of started to kick up again. And of course, last week you heard Kyle Shanahan say, I never thought that Mac Jones would not be on this roster going into the 2026 season. And just a few days after that, you start hearing rumors of maybe a potential trade to the Pittsburgh Steelers, who still have to figure out their quarterback situation because Aaron Rodgers has not really given them an indication of what he wants to do. Of course, his former head coach from Green Bay, Mike McCarthy, is there in Pittsburgh now. But I know that we're all just exhausted from talking about these same 3 things, but Dwayne, the Mac Jones rumors, at least for him to go to Pittsburgh, do you think this has any legs, or do you think that we're just going to be right back here next week during the NFL draft saying, listening to Kyle Shanahan say Mac Jones was never going to go anywhere?
Well, if he says he's not going to go anywhere, that means he's going to go somewhere. And Pittsburgh will be a great place for him to go because it's wide open there, and I'm sure Mac Jones will be good in that offense because guess what? It's a West Coast offense, so he will be in the perfect place, and he has some receivers there too, and I wouldn't see why the 49ers they don't make a deal with Pittsburgh because he's shown that he can win. Okay, with what he proven last year when he stepped in, he did a great job of keeping the team alive and going. And Pittsburgh has a good defense too, so it would be. He is the kind of guy that plays great ball control. I thought he did a great job of protecting the ball last year. I'm not talking about like Jimmy, Jimmy throwing the screen and getting it intercepted. He wasn't like that. He would either take the sack or throw the ball away. He wouldn't do stupid things. Okay, I hate using that word, but he's not Jimmy. Okay, so I would think Pittsburgh be a great landing spot for him. But that's one thing Pittsburgh don't do. They don't trade for very many players. Yeah, I mean, over the years, they've only made a few. The last probably 5 or 6 years, they probably only made 2 or 3 trades for another player. So that would be interesting what the Steelers do.
Yeah, and we did, have a lot of this speculation, this trade speculation with Brandon Ayuk and the Pittsburgh Steelers not too long ago, although it feels like forever ago that we were going through all that. But the Steelers, I do think, would make a lot of sense for Mac Jones, a team that's kind of in transition right now with an aging quarterback with Aaron Rodgers. I mean, that quarterback position in Pittsburgh has been up in the air for, the last several seasons. And now you're moving on from Mike Tomlin as well. A veteran, if you don't get Aaron Rodgers back, because Aaron Rodgers would be, like a no-brainer placeholder quarterback for the Pittsburgh Steelers, a guy who would not need, very much time at all to get accustomed to Mike McCarthy's system because he's done this for a decade plus in his career prior. And I think that he would slide in just fine. And obviously he was in Pittsburgh last year, so he knows the facilities, everyone that he's going to be around for the most part with that team. And I think that that's the obvious choice for the Steelers, but obviously that would depend on Rodgers wanting to come back. And as we know, we don't have enough time for me to divulge all of the wonderful things that I would have to say about Aaron Rodgers. So on this show, but this guy is completely unpredictable. We never really know what Aaron Rodgers is going to do. And we know that he loves to make the situation about himself. So I'm absolutely positive that he's going to have like some kind of a very climactic moment where he either does or does not go to the Steelers, and we will all know about it. He might do a LeBron James The Decision type broadcast just to announce that he's going to retire. Like, I could totally see Aaron Rodgers doing that. But I think that if you are the Steelers and you kind of just want to bypass all that BS, Mac Jones is a very, very good option because this is a guy who is not going to cause a lot of controversy. He's not going to rock the boat. Certainly isn't near like a fraction as much of a look at me type guy as Aaron Rodgers is. And he's, as you said, Dwayne, very consistent play for the 49ers last year. The 49ers do not make the playoffs last year if Mac Jones was not on this roster. That's how good he was for this team in those fill-in moments when Brock went down with that toe injury. But Ayrton, we have kind of long pegged Mac Jones as like his value is a number 2 draft, a second round pick or higher. Are you still feeling that same way, or at this point, are you maybe willing to flex on that a little bit?
I'd say that's probably a good place to be for him at this time. Just looking at, because I think so many teams that have question marks at quarterback are really just kind of deciding to bide their time for next year, because next year is going to be a pretty good, I know we always say this, but I really feel like 2027 is going to be a very good year for quarterbacks. And some of these teams are kind of like, all right, we'll just kind of sit pat. The Steelers roster overall is not built to sit pat. It is built to be all in. So I think they could be there. They have more picks than almost any other team. They have 12 total draft picks in this NFL draft this year. So they have multiple third rounders. It could be a situation, seeing as the Niners don't have that third rounder anymore, packaging, 85 and 99 overall, give a couple thirds. I could see that happening, but I'd say a second is still probably the way to go, just because teams that need quarterbacks will pay up for them. That's why, some of the teams that are like, maybe they won't end up in the top 10 next year. They think they won't be in the top 5, like the Steelers would want to not be in the top 5. So they're like, we need a veteran, bring him on in. I could see that happening for the price of a couple thirds, or a second and a third if, the Niners are playing hardball a little bit.
And, we did hear all last year about how this 2026 quarterback class is going to be one of the best that we've seen maybe ever in the history of the NFL draft. And we have one, maybe two quarterbacks that will go in the first round. And just to close out the show, Ayrton, if you are, let's say, the New York Jets or the Pittsburgh Steelers or any of these teams that kind of have like a in limbo quarterback situation, would you rather go out and give up a second or third round pick for Mac Jones, or would you rather have to give up, arguably probably more than that to go get a Ty Simpson? Like, if you're picking between the two, I know these are two different situations. The Jets seem to be on the verge of a major, well, not really on the verge of a major rebuild, just kind of in the middle of the same major rebuild they've been going through for the last 15 seasons. Or would you rather go get Mac Jones, a guy who is a proven veteran who can kind of right the ship and just keep things stable underneath him? Or would you rather roll the dice on a Ty Simpson, who a lot of people think could be a game-changing type quarterback, a guy who isn't just going to go out there and manage a game for you, but could go out there and win football games for you? If you're doing that calculus in your head, which one do you think is the better choice?
I'm going to hedge my career on that. So I'm going to say I'll go with the proven commodity. I'll go with Mac Jones over Ty Simpson, just because we've seen him do it. And if I am in charge of a franchise, especially a franchise like the Steelers that's has the reputation they do, the mindset they do, yeah, I'm going with Mac Jones. Ty Simpson has a few question marks, and I do want it noted, this year was supposed to be good for quarterbacks, but then they all went back to school. Goodness, the year 2026, they're all going back for another year of school instead of coming out to the NFL. Who would have thought? So,
yeah, I wonder if that whole NIL thing has anything to do with that. Real quick, I said that was where we were going to end the show, but we got a little bit of breaking news that we need to get out to the people. The 49ers, during our show about 30 minutes ago, they signed former Bengals defensive end Cam Sample. So the 49ers have added some depth to that pass rush room. I got to say, I don't know a whole lot about Cam Sample, so I got to go back and do some homework. But 26 years old, he's played his entire career with the Bengals. Selected him in the 4th round pick of the 2021 NFL draft. It is a 1-year deal, and he's been a backup for the majority of his career. He's only started 5 games. He's played in 61, and he had 2 sacks last year in his 14 games that he appeared in. So those 2 sacks would have put him in the top 5 for the 49ers in their sack room last year, unfortunately. But so, I mean, just another body that you can add into the mix. I mean, I think the 49ers are pretty much, kind of done adding those big name splashy moves. I mean, you're not going to see, a Joey Bosa signing. And I think this kind of signals that you're not going to see the 49ers go out there and go get like a Cam Jordan or a Joey Bosa or any of these other aging pass rushers that are still on the market. 26-year-old kid. I mean, he still seems to have a little bit of development that he could maybe achieve in his time with in the NFL and with the 49ers going forward. But as I said, 1-year deal. We'll see what the 49ers are able to do with him, but I think he's just going to be kind of a rotational guy. I don't expect him to get as many snaps as even like a Sam Okawanu type guy. Like, I think Okawanu is probably going to be the first guy off the bench in that pass rush rotation. So we'll see how Sample fits in with this group up front and with whoever the 49ers select in the NFL draft. 1 week away. I can't wait, man. I can't wait till we actually get to see where all these guys land, who the 49ers are going to draft, and what this team's composition looks like going into 2026. We are so close. I can almost taste it. Show time tomorrow, 2:30 on Friday. Make sure you guys are tuning in for that show. We'll have probably a new schedule coming up with our Wednesday show. We'll figure that out, and I'll let you guys know. Make sure you're following on Twitter at Eric_Engel, and I'll give you all the updates you need to know for your Locked On 49ers squad show. That's all the time we got for you guys today. Thanks so much for tuning in to another episode of the Locked On 49ers Squad Show. If you aren't already subscribed, one, what are you doing? Two, make sure that you are subscribed on the Locked On 49ers YouTube channel, on the Locked On 49ers podcast channel, however you're tuning in. We appreciate it. And shout out to all our everydayers who stick with us from start to finish every single day. Appreciate each and every one of you. That's all the time we got for you guys today. I'm your host, Eric Triple E Engel, for Dwayne Board, for Ayrton Osley. We will see you next time. Peace.
Yeah.